EDU 790 students. This is Jennifer Steele at American University, and I'm going to be presenting today how to do the topic 1 data task for EDU 790 in the spring of 2021 iteration. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So we're focusing on the topic 1 data task, which is from class 1. And this is really just an assignment to get familiar with the very basics of Stata. You're not at this stage trying to memorize code. You're just getting familiar with what different types of code can do in Stata. So in this topic 1 data task, I explain that objective, and then I explain where the original data comes from. The data set for you is actually downloadable on the Canvas webpage. So you would link to the files folder in Canvas, which is right here. And when I open the files folder, I see instructions for logging into the virtual desktop. I see data, do files, and media. We're going to go to data. That's where I'm going to save all the data files for this class. And we want CDC COVID deaths 2020.dta. We're going to download that, which means that we will double click it. We will download it. And as we discussed in class, we're going to save it to our OneDrive-American.edu. And there we're going to save it in a documents folder, and I have an EDU 790 folder inside my documents folder. So wherever it is that you save documents for this class, that's going to be your working directory for pretty much all of your assignments in this course. So always know where in your OneDrive that folder is. For me, it's EDU 790 inside documents inside OneDrive. So I'm going to go there and I'm going to save the data. Now, in this case, the data are already there, so I'm not actually going to click save, but it's the same data set. So I would save that data. And another thing that you can do if that doesn't work is you can download it to your desktop on your own computer and then drag it into your OneDrive folder using the OneDrive interface in the browser. So we went over that in class, so I'm not going to show that here. But if you're having trouble doing that, then that would be a good reason to come to office hours and sign up on Calendly for office hours. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do the data task. Okay, so I've downloaded the data. Now I have to get into the virtual desktop to use Stata. So as you recall from our course, there is under modules, there are instructions about setting up the AU virtual desktop, and those instructions look like this. So I'm going to click the link in the instructions, which actually I bookmarked this link to make it easy for myself to find. So in the future, I don't have to open this handout. I just bookmarked that link. And when I do that, I'll be prompted to log in. If I'm not prompted, because it remembers me, I just click ACC library right here. And that will take me to the virtual desktop where I can open Stata, the free version of Stata for AU students. So that's going to take just a minute, and I'm going to have to log in. And I won't walk through these steps in every video. This is just because it's still the first video. Okay, so that will still take another minute to log in. But once I'm into the virtual desktop, it's going to look like its own separate computer screen. Still has not quite clicked. So let me go back to the quiz and we can start talking about the quiz while we wait for the virtual desktop to load. Okay, so the quiz is really just your topic 1 data task assignment. And so I've downloaded the data from files and I've placed them in my OneDrive folder. And Now we're going to start going through the steps of the assignment. The first step is to open Stata from the AU virtual desktop. So now that I'm into the virtual desktop, it's right here in its own separate browser tab called Remote Desktop Web Client. If you have your own version of Stata, you don't need to be on the virtual desktop. If you can just use your own version of Stata and open the file from wherever you have it. But if you're using the virtual desktop, we're going to go down here to the Start menu in the bottom left. We're going to scroll down to find Stata. Stata 16 is the version that we're using. We're going to click Stata IC 16. That's going to open Stata in our browser window. And remember, we're working on a totally different computer from our own computer when we're using the virtual desktop. We still have our own computer in the other tabs, but in the virtual desktop, we just have the Stata computer. And you can, of course, open Canvas in the virtual desktop as well, because you have internet, you have Windows Explorer or Microsoft Edge, you have browsers that you can use to open Canvas. But for now, we're going to open the data set. So going back to our instructions, we're going to open the data set called CDC COVID deaths in 2020. Okay, so in Stata, I'm going to go File, Open. I'm going to navigate to OneDrive, Documents, EDU 790. That's going to always be my working directory folder. And then I'm going to navigate to CDC COVID deaths 2020, and I'm going to click Open. Now, the first question is, how do you know that the file opened successfully? And the answer is, it's because I can see that as soon as I opened it, all of the variables appear here on the right in the variables list. Also, I did not get an error here under the use command that was executed when I did the opening step. So my answer here is the variables are now listed in the variables list. On the right of the screen. That's going to be how I knew that the file opened successfully. Okay, next question. Using the describe command, answer the following 3 questions about the data set. So describe, you'll remember from class, is a simple command that doesn't tell us about the statistical properties of the data. It just tells us about the data set itself, the rows and columns of the data. So I'm going to type describe right here in the command window, and I'm going to hit enter. So now I see in my results window, I see a lot of attributes of the data set. I see that it has 433 observations or rows, has 18 columns or variables. It was last updated January 17th, 2021. And I see what all my variables are, what their labels are, what types of variables they are under storage type, how they're displayed under display format, and whether they have value labels attached to them and what those value labels are called. I also see that it's sorted by state num and race. That's what I see on from the describe command. So how many observations are in the data set? 433. How many variables? 18. That's going to answer my next 2 questions. 433 observations, 18 columns or variables. Are the data sorted in any particular order? Yes, they're sorted by state num and race in that order. So we'll type that here, state num and race. Next question, open the data browser by typing browse in the command window or by clicking the browse icon on the menu bar. Scroll horizontally to see all the variables. What column colors do you see? I don't know why this says check all that apply. But what column colors do we see? Let's see, so we're going to browse the data. There are 2 ways to do that. One is to click this data browser right here, which is a spreadsheet with a little magnifying glass in the top. The other is to just type the word browse and hit enter. Okay, so this is my data browser where I can see the actual spreadsheet of my data set. I can see all of my rows and columns. I can scroll down to see all of my rows, and I can scroll horizontally to see all of my columns. Okay, so what colors do I see? I see red for some variables. I see blue for other variables like race and origin. And I see black for, oh, and M1. And then I see black for a lot of the variables. The numbers are in black. So I come back here and I say that the colors are red, black, and blue. Okay, next I am going to say, what does each color mean? Okay, now if I've forgotten that, I can quickly watch this video at about 3 minutes, 30 seconds. It tells me what they mean. But because I remember from class what they mean, I'm going to say that red means a string variable, which is a text variable. Black is a numeric variable. And blue is a numeric variable with a value label attached. For example, race, when it says white in blue, it actually is the number 1. When it says black, it actually is the number 2. When it says AIAN for American Indian, Alaska Native, it is actually the number 3, and so forth. So it is a variable that's numeric and can be calculated as a number. You can do statistics with it. But it has this value label attached, which is F race. And F race tells Stata that if it's a number 1, I want to see the word white. If it's a number 2, I want to see the word black, etc. Okay, so next is, how is the data set organized? In other words, what are the variables that uniquely identify each row? Now, to answer this question, I need to really look at the data and think about how the data are organized. So I noticed, first of all, that certain variables like date as of is always December 30th, 2020. It's not just in the first few lines. It's always going to be that way because I can scroll all the way down and it literally never changes. Same thing for start week. It's always February 1st. End week is always December 26th. So that does not change in this data set. So knowing that information doesn't really give me any, I don't get any new information about what's different among the rows just from looking at these columns. However, when I get to state, now I can see that these rows are all United States. These rows are all Alabama. These rows are Alaska, etc. So that's important because if I wanted to know what's different between rows 9 and row 10, part of it is what state it belongs to, what state the data belongs to. But that's not enough. It doesn't uniquely identify each row because there are lots of instances of Alabama. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 instances of Alabama and 7 instances of Alaska, etc. So I need to know more. It doesn't, state alone does not uniquely identify the variable, the row. What I need is what else is special about each row. And the answer is that it's the race ethnicity of the group. So row 10 is specific to white residents of Alabama. Row 11 is specific to Black residents of Alabama. 12 is specific to American Indian, Alaska Native residents of Alabama. And there's nothing else in here. I can scroll over and double check to make sure. This origin is important, but origin tells us if the groups are Hispanic or not Hispanic. And that would be important to the unique identification, except that we already have a Hispanic category that corresponds to that variable. So Hispanic is already taken care of in the way that the race variable is constructed. So all we need to uniquely identify each row and to know which population this is, which group of COVID deaths this is, which total deaths this is, all we need to know is the state and the race of the group. And those are the two variables that uniquely identify each row. But to know that, we really have to look at the data and understand how the data are organized. So that's the answer to number 7. State and what's the other? Race, state and race. Now you might say, well, the data are sorted by state number and race, state num and race. So why isn't it state num and race? And that would be fine if you put that. The only thing is that we do have some cases where state is not missing and state num is missing. So if state num is missing, it's not giving us any unique information. So a better answer would be state and race in this case. Okay. Moving on to question 8. Which variables or columns seem not to vary at all as you scroll downward? It says you don't have to list them all, but we might be able to list them all. I already mentioned that the first 3 variables don't change as I scroll from observations 1 to 433. They never change. Same thing for age group. Age group is always going to be the word all. There's no variation. It's always the same thing. Let's see if there are any others. Now, most of the numeric ones, those do have variation as we scroll downward. They're not the same all the way down. We also see differences as we scroll down in origin and M1 and race origin and COVID CDC, although that one is only observed for the first 9 rows, and then it's always missing. But the only ones that never change as you scroll down are date as of, or data as of, start week, end week, and age group. So we'll write those here. Data as of, start week, end week, and age group. Okay, next. Focusing on row 1 of the data in the data browser, how many COVID-19 deaths did the CDC report for the US as a whole, meaning in total, between those 2 dates, February 1st and December 26th of 2020? So we're going to focus on the data browser. And again, we're already in the data browser. Data editor browse means data browser. And so it says focus on the first row. That means row 1. Which I've just highlighted. And that's because it applies to all races in total in the United States. So the question is, how many COVID deaths were reported for everyone? And the answer is this number right here, COVID death. It's 356,861. 356,861. 356,861. Okay. Next is how many COVID, wait, can I put a comma? Yeah, I think Canvas will accept the comma to make it easier to read. How many COVID deaths did the CDC report for non-Hispanic Black residents? And then the next question is going to be non-Hispanic white residents. So we can look at those 2 numbers right now. Okay, how do we know which is which? The answer is we look at United States as a whole and white and Black. Okay, so we're looking at these 2 rows of data. And COVID deaths for Black residents is 65,056. So let's put that in, 65,056. And the next one is for white residents, 195,931, 195,931. 195,931. Okay. Scrolling down, write 1 to 2 questions you would like to answer using these data. So now that we know essentially what's in the data, there are a lot of questions we might answer. One is, are Black and Hispanic residents at greater risk of death does the answer depend on which state people live in? Because we have data for all the states and all the races, all the racial ethnic groups as you know, coarsely defined. So those are just 2 questions, but there are many questions you could ask. You could ask any question that has to do with COVID deaths, other variables that we have here, like pneumonia deaths, total deaths, anything to do with race and states are all questions you could ask for 2020. You couldn't ask questions going back historically before 2020 because we don't have that in this particular data set. Okay. Now, I've got a few more questions to get to. Okay, I've got 5 minutes until I have to table this video. So let's see how far we can get. Okay, so explore some summary statistics using statistics drop down. Explore the options and see what you come up with. Then describe one command that you learned in terms of what it does. So we're going to use the statistics drop down menu to get some summary statistics. And then we're going to describe a command that we learned. Okay, so let's go back to Stata. And I'm going to close the data browser. And I'm going to go statistics, summary and descriptive statistics, summary statistics. And I'm going to say, it says leave empty for all variables. I want standard display. And I'm just going to click OK. What happens? What happens is we just ran the command summarize, and summarize gives us the averages. It gives us the number of people who have data, or sorry, the number of rows that have data, that's observations, the means for each variable, the standard deviations for each variable, the minimums and the maximums. And the reason that these are missing for some variables is those are the string variables. Those are text. So you can't give a mean for state because state is letters, it's words. You can't give a mean for age group because it's a word all. So, but for everything that's numeric, it gives us means, standard deviations, etc. So I'm going to type that I learned that summarize provides number of observations, means, standard deviation, minimum, and maximum for the variables. And moving on to question 14, but you could play around and look at other options as well with the drop-down menus. Also, write one or more facts you learned about the data from running the summarize command. Well, I learned that the average population of, oh, how about this? I learned that the average number of COVID deaths across states is 2,472. That's the average mean number of COVID deaths. Oh, that's not in each state. It's in each state by race. In each state by racial group is 2,472 for the period February through December 2020. I should say December 26th and February 1st. Okay, and now we are going to try to replicate this bar graph. Actually, because I have a meeting, I'm gonna end this video right here, and then we will come back later to finish questions 15, 16, 17, and 18. And those are, so that will be in part 2 of the task 1 video. And so I'm going to stop screen share. I'm going to pause this recording and we will revisit in